Greetings all, Dr. Raphael X here with another video with my friend Jeremy here to always talk about interesting philosophical issues. Yeah, subscribe, click on the like button, notifications button, all that good stuff. And yes, the last video we did was on compatibilism. And within within the Catholic view, right? Because I would say Catholicism is the only religion that puts philosophy on the pedestal. So there is a type of compatibilism that's acceptable with freedom justified in the immaterial realm and necessity within the physical realm, excuse me, um, driven by or governed by necessary physical laws. So yes, we do need the immaterial realm to kind of justify freedom. So, but today we're going to talk about cause as such, right? Because in our last video, we kind of and we don't always agree, me and Jeremy, and that's the beauty of discussion. We can kind of pinpoint our ideas. Right? Excellent. So, what is cause? Right? We take these things for granted. It's such a fundamental reality that actually cannot be defined but when you define something, you refer to other more fundamental realities. But because it's so fundamental, you can't define it. It's kind of like being. What is being? I remember in the metaphysical work, being was that which is outside of nothingness. That was the definition. So, what is cause? Cause is basically it's something that contributes towards the existence of something. It produces something which is an effect, right? An effect, if you say effect, you understand cause automatically, right? So there's causes can cause can be understood in different aspects. But I think one of the discrepancies we had, Jeremy, was that I think you see cause in a purely mechanical sense, right? Because I know you really like to defend liberty. You're really, I mean, you're a man who loves virtue, right? I don't, you're not a Pelagius, right? A Pelagian says we can save ourselves. I don't think you believe that, but you are for strong will, right? Strong character. You want to emphasize liberty, but cause, I can understand your viewpoint and let me know if I'm wrong, but cause as mechanical does exist, but at the same time, it doesn't have to. But go ahead if you want to chime in here, talk about the nature of causality denied by many modern philosophers like Hume, for example, and other ones put it in doubt. Hegel, for example. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, in trying to define a term, we can think a little bit how we would go about doing that. First of all, you have to recall that a term itself, considered in its geometrical or auditory aspects, is neither true nor false. Meaning, if we say, for example, the present term cause in a language that we don't speak, we cannot define it and we cannot say whether the definition is true or false. We don't know what's being said. If you don't speak, we speak Spanish. So if we say cause in Spanish, that would work. But you don't speak Chinese, I presume. You don't speak, French, do you? Well, let's say you don't, right? And it's not going to work. Why? Because the term on paper or on a computer screen is a visual sign, meaningless in and of its own self, unless the pictograph or something, but in which case, Egyptian maybe bird would symbolize a real bird. We don't use that. So it's meaningless in and of its own self. And the sound also is meaningless in and of its own self. That's why when we listen to a language that we don't speak, we don't understand it. If the meaning was had in the vibrations of the air themselves, then we would understand every language. Right? Just like we understand maybe a yell by anybody in the world because it's kind of a meaning is more so in the sound. The so phrasing, always sloppily phrased. But languages considered as sounds are just sounds. They're neither true nor false. So, taking a given term, we can ask, what direction does custom point us at? Like what general arena of sense might be meant by a given term? And then we kind of zoom in, just like on a camera. We zoom in on a screen, we kind of try to make something bigger. We kind of zoom in and then we examine what we have there. So, for example, we're to take the term food. We understand FOOD, considered as lines, has no meaning. The sound food has no meaning. And yet, convention in English at this time gives sense symbolically to those geometrical lines or to the sound food. Then we think, what approximately does it mean? Does it mean what we mean by the term rock? No, right? Does it mean what we mean by the term sky? Something up there? No. Something that I can put in my mouth and I can chew on and it can give me nutrition, caloric value. That's not so here too by the term cause. That's something that we could do. We think first of all, what approximately might the term mean? How do people use this term? In what context? And then we zoom in and we go from there. We can try to do that.
Yeah.
So, for example, you'll go ahead or you know.
No, I was just gonna say that
So,
I don't know how okay, definitely the different sounds, but they refer to the same meaning. Like so, words, language is not merely sounds. There's sounds that have to have a meaning. Like obviously, two people speaking Chinese, I don't understand. But if they're just merely emitting, I know they're not just merely emitting sounds. Those sounds, as you mentioned, symbolize a meaning, and that meaning is the fact that language exists is natural to us. Now, you're right in a sense that it's conventional that we put various sounds referring to a meaning. But the fact that we do that is natural to us. And we'll even ask, like, how do you say food in Chinese? You see what I'm saying? So it has a content there that even though the relationship is conventional in the sense that the sound can change, right? So food, maybe in the future we say food is bugada. Let's just say it could, because language does evolve. That's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the content behind it, which is what we're trying to get at to. And it's interesting that you mentioned language because that's very postmodernist. They kind of bring everything down to language, but really language should be revealed from reality. It stems from reality. We put sounds that refer to certain realities so that we can have communication. Because if there's no reality that the word refers to, first of all, community, I could just make sounds up, and this is what the whole the LGBT kind of want to do with made up pronouns. It's like, how can you have a make up pronoun if it has no reality that it refers to? It's my own interior reality. It's like, no, no, we understand chair because there's a chair in reality, right? So cause, same thing, even though that is conventional, that sound, yes, but the content behind it and the fact that it's relational in a sense, it's natural to us that we can, animals don't emit words, which is interesting. An animal cannot say a word, and we know this because they don't have elaborate language, right? A dog just barks, a dog is not going to move, for example. There's no elaborate sounds as we are making right now. So it's yes, but there is it is conventional in that sense. But we can learn a language, and that's interesting. We can learn a language and try to see what that symbolizing is. But the fact that the content, so we're trying to go to the content of the cause, if that exists. But go ahead. Sorry, I think I interrupted you.
no, that's a great point, right? And that would be kind of the punchline here that ultimately the content that different symbols refer to has to be given. So we can mean something, for example, by the term red, and it is that which we do mean by that term in English. And we can mean it by a different word in Spanish and in French and in Chinese and so forth, but ultimately something has to be given. It cannot all be conventional. It
Well, that's a
certainly does
secondary
seem.
quality. I'm sorry, red
Hmm?
red can be questionable because that's you mentioned in another video. That's a secondary quality, right? Which can only exist here. But I'm sorry, go ahead. Like red is
Yeah, right, but even should we were we to accept that demarcation in the primary and secondary qualities, the secondary qualities would still be given to us to some extent. If somebody's colorblind, there's no amount of talking that can give to them the experiences that others have denoted by general category of color. Right? So, for example, if I have never been hungry, I was born a prince or princess, never been even a little bit hungry. I can talk about hunger. I can read about hunger. I can use the word hunger all day long, starvation, use that word. But I
Right.
don't know what it means firsthand. If I've never felt emotions such as anger or love, I could write dissertations about it. I don't know what these words mean. I have to ultimately directly apprehend some sorts of realities, be they perceptual realities such as colors or inner realities such as emotions, or also intellectual realities such as ideas. And this
You're
might
right.
be going a little bit, veering a little bit off track, but here, that's why the analogy has been suggested that we see intellectually akin to how we see physically. We have physical sight, those of us that do, and we also have intellectual sight. And just like some people are blind um, physically, they cannot see with their eyes. Some of us are blind intellectually. Indeed, that's the starting point. In order to see intellectual realities, we have to develop ourselves and build up our character and think deeply and truly. And then we begin to see the, so to say, intelligible world. And without such capacities, we don't see. We can only rearrange words, which even ChatGPT can do, or a
Yeah.
parrot can do.
So you said something interesting, and I think you are building off or explicitly referring to David Hume, which says, well, the origin, like where does the concept of cause come from, right? And he would say, really, we do not experience it. So it's kind of referring to what you're saying. We do not experience a nexus between cause and effect. Causation as such is not experienced, which may seem absurd, and I believe it to be absurd because it's something that we immediately perceive. So, but he's going to say, you turn on the fire, the water boils. You do not see the nexus there, which you would call cause and effect. Cause and effect refers to a relationship between the two things, the fire and the boiling of water. So, yes, if you see like the white ball in pool, you hit the white ball to hit the other balls, right? Um, but we don't see that the white ball actually moves the other balls. Okay. Basically, I think Hume did not truly believe in that. I think he was trying to be an academic skeptic, David Hume, because it was just kind of interesting at the time. I think we have to argue philosophically in this aspect that because the effects would be so absurd, or because this is such a fundamental reality, we can't demonstrate this. This is something that should be immediately evident. It shouldn't be doubted at all. So we have to kind of argue it like the ad absurdum, or kind of like, if I were to take your position as true, what are the consequences that come from that? So if there is no causality, I mean, no one would do anything, literally. Like if that were true, and you mentioned custom before, but it seems like it doesn't give it a lot of oomph in a sense. I think we can immediately see causality on our own. Like we can discover that on our own without this appeal to custom. Or I was taught this. I was taught to flip the switch and turn on the light. I think there's something here that's immediately evident, and the consequences of it would be dire if it were denied.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Well, so proceeding down the kind of using the method that was mentioned, right? Using the words and thinking about convention of point us in the right direction. And then picking up from last time, we would say, what approximately does cause mean? What are some examples? We say, I dropped something. That's the cause. The effect is that it
Right,
fell. My room got cleaned. That's the effect of the cause, which is that I cleaned it.
right,
Right. My employer paid me. That's the cause. The effect is money in the bank account, at least for a couple hours before I spend it all, for example. Right. And so forth and so on. So here we can zoom in a little bit more and see what kind of realities do we have at hand. So the earlier argument was that as it concerns sense experience, what we have are contiguities. One thing follows another. We have sequences. However, if we take a first person point of view, we see that there's a unique relation between a desire and that which we do to satisfy that desire. For example, if I feel hungry, I don't like how it feels, and then I look to eat, there's a particular relation that's called relation A between me looking to eat and hunger, or my desire to avoid the hunger. There's a particular relation that is not simply a sequence. So, again, first is night and then is day. That's a particular relation, and yet it's different than the relation between my hunger and my attempt to alleviate the hunger. In both cases, one thing follows another thing. First is night, then is day. First is my hunger, then is my attempt to alleviate that hunger. That both cases has in common. But there's something that both cases do not have in common, and that is my first hand oversight of the relationship between a desire and that which I do to try to satisfy the desire. So now, if we wish, we can use the term cause to refer to the second relation between hunger and an attempt to alleviate that hunger. And we can use a term such as sequence in order to refer to something like day following night. Therefore, in light of this reasoning, we would say that we can never see cause and effect in the phenomenal world, right? But we can self-supervise it in our subjective experience, and we can infer its presence in the phenomenal world as appropriate. You get the argument?
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying, but the fact that we would like, let's if someone were to say I was hungry, right? I am hungry. You would tell them, well, you're not simply imposing your subjective experience on them. You would say, well, you better eat something, right? And you would push them to eat something. Let's say they wanted to starve themselves to death. You would say, no, no, eat something, please eat something. Like you don't see it yourself as a mere imposition of your subjective experience, like your belief of cause and effect, even though it's experienced by you firsthand, it's very much based on reality. Like you didn't make up that causal relationship. And that's why the pattern is always like, and there's always a pattern. If I'm hungry, I always eat food and always alleviate my hunger. It's like, oh, this is what I experienced. But you didn't cause that cause, if that makes sense. You kind of discovered that cause, right? And someone who hasn't discovered that cause, because really what we know is, the principle stems from reality, right? It's not that we don't impose reality or principles on reality. Maybe technology does to a certain point, manipulates reality, but okay, but not fundamentally. We extract that from reality and we're able to, we subjectively experience, that's true, it's subjective experience, but it's not totally that. Like that would be very Kantian in a sense, where he believes that causality is like a lens. It's one of the fundamental lens in that we're built in. We're built in to see cause and effect. But no, the traditional realist perspective is that cause is in reality, it's discovered. And I can infer that by patterns, right? So for example, every time I turn this, the water comes out. Every time, right? Maybe one time it didn't, but most of the times it does. I can infer that myself turning this is the cause of the water coming out. Now, it's true that others haven't subjectively experienced it, but that doesn't mean it's not true. And this goes to the notion of truth too. Like maybe we could get into that. What is truth, right? Is truth something that I perceive, or is it, you know, what is the notion of truth? I think we're kind of getting into that realm, but go ahead if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, again, let's really understand this argument, right? Because you're saying, I agree with some of the stuff you're saying, right? And that, and I'm not at all suggesting that subjective cause and effect is subjective in the sense of made up. I'm saying it's subjective in the sense of
Experience.
being content of firsthand experience. The
Right.
argument is this: I am Words are meaningless in and of their own self. Cause means nothing to us, said in a different language. We don't know what it means. We're thinking what is given to us in reality, whether we call it subjective or objective, in reality, what is given to us such that we feel comfortable using the term cause to denote it. Right? So the argument is, again, that anything that we experience perceptually, all that we have are sequences. It doesn't matter how many times it's repeated. It just so happens that A happens and then B happens. I'm reading a book. Thing it's easy to say, what's the cause? What is the cause? Is the cause that the author wrote the book? Is the cause that the author's parents and the author? Is the cause that the book was printed? Is the cause that somebody made up the language and all the millions of people that went into making the language and making up the script? Is the cause the retina, the optical nerves, the activity in the brain? Is it my comprehension? Right? So we can say all of it, we can say some of it, who knows? Right? We can describe some of the things that appear to be necessary but insufficient for this to be ongoing. But that's what we have. However, in our firsthand subjective experience, we can self-supervise. We can observe a distinct and unique relation between a desire and seeking to satisfy that desire. And that is different than mere sequence. A mother hears her child crying, right, and she goes to her child. That's not simply A and then B. There's a unique relation between the mother hearing her child cry and going to the child. She wants to tend to her child, hopefully. Right? That is a relation that is absent on principle and can never be directly apprehended in phenomenal experience. I can never look at something close enough and see, oh, well, here's a cause in this sense. Do you get the argument or no?
I think so, but I'm not sure how desires negate. I don't know how desires come in here because we're trying to look at it coldly, logically, and trying to be objective. So I don't know how would a desire come into play with the existence of causality. Maybe that's what I'm missing.
Sure, sure. So again, we can't let's try to strip off the words that we use from just their kind of emotional connotations. Oh, desire means subjective and cause means objective. Think about our direct firsthand experience, which can be had right here, right now, at any time, at any place. I am here of a prospect of earning some money. That's item A. Item B, I seek to earn that money. There's a relation between A and B that we can observe. You get that?
Yeah.
There's a particular relationship between A and B that I can see. It's not that it's subjective desire. Just there's a relationship between A and B that I can see.
Right.
There's an opportunity to earn money,
You're not
and
you're
here
not
I am
gonna
trying to earn money.
you're not applying cause and effect now, right? Not yet. You just see a
Well,
relationship.
those are words. Those are words. We're just trying to clarify, in reality, what are some of the relevant realities that exist.
Okay.
There is that relationship between an opportunity to earn money and my attempt to earn money. There is a particular relationship between a state such that is called thirst and me reaching for some water to quench that thirst. Right? Right. So that relationship is absent as it concerns observation, sense connected observation. I can't just look at something and say that relation is there. You get the argument? I can only do it from a first hand point of view.
Yeah, but I mean, I get it what you're saying, but I would say that it. I mean, if that's just the skepticism position ultimately that really we cannot immediately perceive cause and effect, right? Right that's as it exists in reality, as objective, as actually emanating from reality, like actually existing from reality, as opposed to it's Kantian too, in a sense that you're imposing, in a sense, from your experience, a real you witness the phenomenon. That's what you're saying. But what's in reality is the phenomenon, and you apply the reality. Again, this is the a priori categories of Kant. You're like time and space. Time and space are just a priori categories that are applied to explain phenomena. That's basically what you're saying, right? So there's phenomena that we experience, and we apply labels, cause and effect, which is the subjective application in a sense. The forms, like the forms, is what things are. We are imposing it on reality because we can't know what reality is in itself. This is Kantian. Reality is not known in itself. We only know the manifestation of reality, right? Reality has manifested to me, and then I'm able to describe it with built-in categories that are like lenses. They're literally like lenses that I have. Causality is a fundamental one that I apply that. And this is called the transcendental idealism. Transcendental, Kant uses it as meaning immanent. That I apply it to the phenomenal world. Am I getting that position? Is that right? What you're saying, basically, that we perceive the phenomenon, but we give it a meaning.
Yeah, it's in that ballpark, right?
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
just
or
caution
yeah.
that yeah, it's
The,
on ballpark, or it
the
is.
problem
You
with
know,
that view is like you either one step here, one step there. It's like you either come to the realist position because it's like you have a foot in and a foot out in a sense. It's like, yes, we perceive this, but we kind of subjectively define it. We perceive this, yes, it's real. It's a phenomenon, it's a manifestation. There's an actual manifestation of something, but we give it the meaning. The problem with that is that, and that's very Kantian, is like you either go back to realism or you fall into an extreme idealism. Because Kant, I mean, ultimately, if you're going to give it its meaning, you're also going to, the phenomena is going to come from you too. It makes no sense to say we don't know reality in itself. Because if you don't know, if you say reality exists, but we don't know it in itself, it's just a small step from saying, oh, there is no reality. For like that, Hegel had the right, the conclusion from Kant, which is you can't, the noumenal world, the noumenon, which we don't know is the thing in itself we don't know, it's just a chaos. We kind of order it with our minds. Hegel's saying, well, everything's kind of ideal, absolute idealism. So with Kant, it's like you can't stay with Kant. With Kant, you either go a little to here or more towards the realist position, saying, no, no, cause and effect is the realist position, is in reality. And I'm just extracting that from reality. Like kind of like number. Number, in a sense, is real. Like three. Where's three? Well, three is in things, right? Three is in three things. But I extract that as a reality as opposed to me imposing threeness on this manifestation of something. But go ahead. That's so I'm saying with that position, it's like it's hard to stay in that position because it's like let's just say everything's ideal. Let's just say we make everything kind of up and subjective, and not only does it not have meaning, but even the thing itself doesn't exist. There is no phenomenon. The phenomenon is here too. So that's that one extreme. And then the other extreme is say, no, there's a phenomenon, of course, but that comes from a substance, like a substratum, a reality in itself, a metaphysical reality that exists outside of me. That cause and effect actually existing. But go ahead. Go ahead. I don't wanna...
and so Kant can be credited with that
Yeah, Kant for sure. That's Kant.
observation, with taking apart just naive realism, which does not at all consider the subject, but a mistake that many would say that he made would be to leave that opening for a quote unquote thing in itself, right, that can never, on principle, be apprehended or dealt with whatsoever. And therefore, that would make the sum total of the reality available for our knowledge to be subjective over or beneath the or alongside with or whatnot the objective world. So there's more sophisticated positions in that, right? For example, we can say that um, reality constitutes a whole, and it is a whole such that is rational intrinsically, and it is empirical intrinsically. It is not as if, on the one hand, is irrational, haphazard experience, and on the other hand, excuse me, is rationality conceived in some scholastic Aristotelian sense, and then the two have to be meshed or superimposed onto each other or whatnot. We derive logical relations, rational relations from our experience, and we need our experience in order to ever attain to rationality. So, for example, excuse me, the fact that if, for example, water flows into a closed space, it will eventually overflow. You can't group it in the category of naive empiricism or naive rationalism. Oh, this is just a cold logical relation. Oh, this is just a cold. This is just a random grouping of sensations. It's rational. Think about it. There's a closed space, and there's a limited amount of space, and water keeps coming in. It's rational that eventually it's going to overflow,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also empirical. It's something that we observe and we can think up, and with the help of observations, we can think about. So instead of saying that, to our point, causation applies unto the phenomena, but the phenomena is strictly subjective, with there being some other nominal objective world, which cause and effect, for example, may not apply to or may be different. We wouldn't necessarily say that. We would say that reality is rational. Right? There's no room when we see, for example, a red stop sign to say there's really a nominal red stop sign, which this is just a copy of. No, it's a red stop sign, and we think about it logically. How did it get there? Who built it? When was it put in place? For what cause? For what purpose? This and that. The present idea would simply be that there's a distinct relation between desire and that which satisfies that desire, that we can supervise, self-supervise when we observe ourselves. And that relation cannot itself be extracted from our observations. I wouldn't say that, that's not, that there's an objective nominal world that is different than that, and that whatever the case might be. You get the argument?
Yeah, yeah. But basically, is this right? Like, um, there's no value beyond the realm of experience, or no?
Well, that again would be presuming that, or taking that demarcation, that Kantian demarcation, a bit too seriously, in my opinion. Experience is quote unquote subjective as opposed to something objective. Right? We have reality, and reality is ordered. It's rational. It can be experienced, and the more that we think, and the more that we grow and develop ourselves, the more bigger slice of the pie, so to say, we may hope to have.
Now, does cause
For example,
exist in reality? Like, so is there causation as such, cause as we understand it, outside of subjective experience?
well, here that demarcation between subjective and objective again would be a soft line, if anything. It would not be a hard line. Again, we're so used to thinking in naive, say, naturalist terms, and just from the way that textbooks are written, and stuff like that. The laws of physics are causing things, and here's my mind, and here there's more sophisticated views. And
Yeah, I could understand that, like in
as
a
it,
sense with time. Like time is like it's based on the objective reality of change, but time itself exists in the mind. Well, exists as a calculation of change. So it has a subjective element and it has the objective element. But here, what's kind of confusing is that with cause, it seems like the kind of splitting hairs between having a middle position with subjective and objective, because it's either, I don't know how it could be both. I mean, how it's like there's no third option. It seems like it either comes from reality or it's imposed on reality. Basically, it's either come and reality, by reality I mean was extra mental, extra outside. It comes outside of us. Like, where does it originate from, or it originates in us? And you're kind of saying a middle
who
position.
who said who said right that what's in us is less real than what's not in us, or that the out there is something different than out. Right? These are distinctions that generally we've accepted kind of as a package without really thinking it through. And there have been views, for example, of Mel Branch. You heard of him?
Yeah, Mother
He's a
French.
Catholic thinker.
Extreme other.
Nick, huh?
He was a heretic, though, condemned by the church.
That's too bad. Yeah, but
I think
but
that's.
uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
so Mel Branch, right, with his occasionalism, where he really kind of took the idea, ran with the idea that we can never extract causation in the phenomenal world, and he would have it that each and every modification of anything is directly brought about by a will,
Right.
right? So there's different kinds of views. I'm not saying that by any means that
Oh
that's the
yeah,
correct view, but
that's
I'm just saying there's different kinds of views.
now the general, and this is the Catholic view, and I don't say Christian like referring to other denominations. The non-Catholic Christians do not have this at least expounded, but the Catholic view is that we are truly causality exists. We are truly causes. Like for example, in Scripture, inspiration, Scripture. Like in Islam, you have Muhammad is not the cause at all of the Quran. He just mechanically wrote what the Archangel Gabriel told him. In Catholicism, we have something called a free cause or instrumental cause, instrumental and free cause. Obviously, you have instrumental causes that are not free, like a musical instrument playing music. That's a cause, but the player, the one playing the instrument is the main cause. The instrumental cause with the instrument is in his name. But in Catholicism, we have instrumental but free causes, and you see this clearly in inspiration, and even in how we can participate in redemption, that we can actually be the cause of our salvation and our condemnation. Obviously, God is the first cause of all things, uh, but really with our condemnation and sin as such, God does not cause at all, which is really a mystery in itself. But with going back to inspiration, Scripture is written. God's the author of Scripture; it's the Word of God. But He goes through free, secondary, instrumental causes. So, like John, the Gospel of John, he truly wrote it as a cause, like he caused it, but as a secondary cause. So, what's beautiful about Catholicism, and this goes against this reductive Malebranche occasionalism, very reductive. And this is what happens with heresies; they're not able to harmonize apparent contradictions. That God is the first cause, yes, but that doesn't make us occasions. That makes us actual causes, secondary causes subject to the only cause that is God, if that makes sense. So really the Catholic position is what justifies science by defending cause and reality. This Kantian view had actually destroyed science, as we see in postmodernism, which is very anti-scientific. You have the extreme; they're very much against science, against the rationalism, scientism, and they have some legit criticisms. But really, the Catholic spirit says that no, there are in nature causes which we discover, and hence we have the sciences. Science is not just like something made up by man, right? Science is something discovered where through testing, through experimentation, and in medicine they do this all the time, very complex manner, where we can determine what things cause this effect, for example. So without that, the sciences are done for. Like if there's no causality in reality, right? The Kantian view, the fact that the subject matters is detrimental. And I'll just end with this, and then we can end. I'll give you the last word. The basis of logical truth, which is my conformity with reality, is metaphysical truth. So if I can't have a conformity with reality if there's no reality in itself that's true, that has metaphysical content. So causation has to be in reality, and I'm able to explicate it. That's why there's a difference between cause and correlation. Like and reality will dictate that. Sometimes it's hard to ascertain, but reality would dictate cause and correlation. How did the scientists do it? A trial and error. trial and error. Look at Edison, thousands of bulbs. He was trying to look at what cause, a certain cause you can get for this effect, right? The light coming out. He didn't put anything of his own, nothing. He just did experiment to find out this is what is going to, this is the apt cause for this effect. So I think really that's why Catholicism gives this ultimate justification to philosophy and hence to science, and that's why I think today there's a anti-scientific view. But go ahead, I'll give you the last word, and then we can end on that. But
Yeah. So um, the view that what we call, even if not entirely um, linguistically soundly, causal relations are not made up. That's a perfectly justified view. It's a perfectly fine view, right? Certainly, we have to mine reality to figure out what works and how things work. Certainly, we don't say, oh, let me consult my whims to figure out how to build a bridge that will allow cars to drive over it, to figure out how to get a satellite into space, to figure out how to launch a projectile, and so forth and so on. We experiment and we take notes and we approach nature with an open mind and we try to figure out how to get things done. So I throw in some wood into my fireplace and I get nice and hot and cozy soon. I throw in um, some stones into my fireplace. It's not going to help. I get the stones like this, and maybe eventually a spark will come, and there'll be some fire. I just clap my hands. Not going to happen. So that's fine. Not only is that fine, that's essential. It's of the essence. The present argument is not doesn't contravene that. It doesn't contradict that. It's simply saying that what we have as it concerns our experiences are different contiguities or different sequences. I bang the stones together, a spark may come out. I throw some paper in the fire and blow on it, fire should get bigger. Fine, absolutely. Right? And that's how it's been, and that's how it is. And we presume, depending on how we would approach the problem of induction, we presume that that's how it will go on. Excuse me. Here, the argument is that is one relation. It's an essential relation. We can call it cause and effect if we like. Those are just terms, as we've been discussing. We can also call it sequence if we want. We can call it whatever we like. That's one thing. And then the distinct relationship between something that is willed, say the efforts that are undergone to bring that about, the object of the will, that's a different relationship. And it can never be seen or touched or smelt or heard or tasted. That's the five, right? It can't be. That's just a matter of fact. Noting that, keeping that distinction in mind can be important because it allows some of our
This is why I
discussions
back to these toys.
It allows for freedom. It allows for intelligence. It allows for love. It allows for all of these realities that we treasure. Because if we were to say that there exists between, say, different clumps of matter a relationship of necessity such that there exists between, for example, the desire of a mother to feed her child and her attempting to feed her child, then we would make ourselves completely subject to clumps of matter in a Laplacian universe, right? Where everything is determined according to matter and its motions. The present view avoids that by saying that certainly there are regularities and rules descriptive of our experience, and we can go so far by minding those rules and regularities intelligently, again, building the bridges and launching the satellites and agriculture and how to farm and how we're going to clean water and all these kind of things. And yet, none of that can ever take away from the values and realities that we cherish the most, such as freedom, right? Because there are no grounds to read into any of these sequences the sort of necessity that we can only experience at first hand by observing ourselves as a volition, for example, or the capacity of volition.
Yeah, I think you ended it with very well from what I said at the beginning that um, it is hard to harmonize cause and effect with freedom because of the necessary link that, and I understand that. But this notion I introduced, which is not uh, against the principle of contradiction, that there can be free causality, and this is probably what we could pick up in our next video, but we'll leave it at that. And yeah, definitely we'll pick it up again. And thank you for joining us. God bless, and until next time, very good discussion here.